Welcome back, everyone. Today, in this explainer, we are tackling something that literally affects every single one of us: success. But here's the catch, and it's kind of the whole foundation of what we're going to be talking about today. Success is not just going to magically drop into your lap. You've got to hunt it down. It takes action, it takes serious intention, and honestly, a really solid strategy.
So I want you to really ask yourself right now, are you just waiting for success to find you? Because, it's so easy to fall into that trap, right? Just passively waiting for our big break. We sit on the couch hoping the dream job will call or the perfect opportunity will just knock on the door. Well, today we're flipping that script. We're going to look at how to stop waiting for that lightning strike and start creating it yourself.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap. First, we'll bust the myth of passive success. Then, we'll look at pursuing your passions, creating a realistic plan, outsmarting your own biases, maintaining momentum, and finally, locking in that proactive mindset. Let's get to it.
Part 1. The myth of passive success. Stop waiting, start doing. Here's the absolute bedrock of everything we're looking at today. Success rarely comes to people who passively wait. It's actually found by the people who put themselves out into the world and actively hunt for it. So, to help us make this massive shift from a passive, waiting around mindset to a fiercely proactive one, we're going to lean on the insights of 4 incredible behavioral science experts. These folks have literally mapped out exactly how our brains work, and, how they sometimes totally sabotage us when we're trying to reach our goals. Part 2. Pursue your passions. The spark. All right, so this brings us to our first real phase of action, finding that initial spark. And this gem comes straight from Adam Grant's amazing book, Hidden Potential. He gives us this incredible piece of advice. He says, choose something you enjoy practicing, not just something you want to achieve. Think about it. Becoming a master at literally anything means you are going to sink thousands of hours of your life into practicing it. If you hate the day-to-day grind, there's no way you're sticking around long enough to actually see success. But even with the stuff we love, it gets tedious, right? Grant says you've got to mix it up to keep things fresh. Like, if you're aggressively networking for a new job, don't just do endless, exhausting one-on-one coffee chats. Change the scenery. Go to a conference instead. You've got to keep the practice itself engaging. You can really see the stark contrast between these two mindsets here. If you are entirely fixated on the achievement, like you just want to hold the trophy at the very end, you are fast-tracking yourself to burnout. The distance between where you are today and that finish line is just way too far. But if you learn to actually enjoy the process, if you lean into the daily practice, that is what's going to keep your motivation alive when the work inevitably gets tough. You've got to love the daily steps.
Part 3. Create a realistic plan. The map.
So, you've identified your passion. What's next? Well, you need a map. Pulling some great insights from Charlie Gilkey's book, Start Finishing, we learned that when your goals are just these vague, fuzzy desires floating around in the back of your head, you naturally only focus on the massive final result. And because you don't have a map to get there, the sheer scale of the project is just terrifying. And what happens? Mental paralysis. Complete inaction. You get so intimidated by the unknown mountain of work ahead of you that you don't even take the very first step. And this brilliantly illustrates Gilkey's practical cure for that exact mental paralysis. It's all about making a realistic plan. Step 1. Chop that massive, scary goal down into tiny, bite-sized individual steps. Step 2. Take a hard look at the resources you actually have right now: your time, your budget, the helpful people in your network. Step 3. Put it all on a concrete timeline. Doing this completely forces clarity. It stops you from panicking over the big picture and keeps you moving forward, actively, instead of passively. Let's ground this with a real-world example. Take a guy named John. John's goal is to learn the bass guitar. His vague idea is, man, I want to play in a band someday. But becoming a real musician feels so huge and daunting, he just puts it off. He's totally paralyzed. So John uses our 3 steps to make a concrete plan. He asks his musician buddies for gear advice. He books weekly lessons and a strict practice schedule. Finally, he sets monthly benchmarks to track his improvement. Just like that, this vague, impossible dream becomes a super manageable, concrete schedule. He knows exactly what he needs to do today, tomorrow, and next week.
Part 4. Outsmart your own biases. The internal resistance.
Okay, drawing from behavioral scientist Grace Lordan's brilliant book, Think Big, we have to face a pretty hard truth. Even if your plan is absolutely flawless, your own mind is going to throw up massive roadblocks. She explains the cognitive biases, which are basically these sneaky little errors in how we naturally perceive the world, can totally trap us in passive, stuck patterns. But
If you can spot these biases happening and actively call them out, you can break the cycle.
The first major trap Lorden points out is confirmation bias. This is your brain's super annoying habit of looking only for evidence that backs up what it already believes while completely ignoring absolutely everything else. This is a disaster when your brain is trying to confirm a negative belief like, I'm so lazy, or I'll never pull this off. It absolutely destroys your confidence and makes you just want to quit. So how do you beat it? You fight back. The second you catch yourself thinking, I'm lazy, you need to proactively sit down and list out recent evidence that proves you aren't. You have to literally force your brain to look at the other side of the story.
The second big bias is anticipatory loss aversion. This is the tendency to believe that the downside of failing is vastly worse than the upside of succeeding. And here is the crucial point. This bias is a massive paralyzer. It completely tricks us into thinking that trying something new and challenging is going to end in a total unrecoverable disaster. It makes the consequences of failure feel 1,000,000 times higher than they actually are in reality. Let's look at our buddy Joe the networker to see how this plays out. Joe wants to ask a senior coworker out for coffee. His anticipatory loss aversion kicks in and he's spiraling. He fears that if they say no, he's going to look desperate and he'll be a laughingstock forever. But if Joe challenges this bias by looking at the actual reality, what happens? If they say no, there's maybe a 5-second moment of awkwardness, and then literally both of them will completely forget about it. By challenging the bias, Joe takes this terrifying, world-ending scenario and realizes it's actually an incredibly low-stakes reality.
Part 5. Maintain your momentum. The midpoint slump.
Let's move to Eyelet Fishbox insights from Get It Done to see how all this builds. Think about the lifespan of any project. You've got the exciting start, right? Motivation is through the roof. But then you hit step 2, the boring middle. The shiny novelty is completely gone, and the finish line is still miles and miles away. This middle zone is exactly where most people abandon their plans, lose all their motivation, and just get stuck in a rut. And honestly, if you stop here, trying to regain that initial momentum later on is so daunting that you might just avoid it forever.
So how in the world do we survive that dreadful, boring middle? Fishbox gives us an amazing toolkit. First, put your progress into perspective. Stop obsessing over how far you still have left to go and actually turn around to look at how far you've already come. It reminds you of the sweat you've already invested. Second, celebrate those tiny wins to keep your confidence up. Break that huge middle space up into micro starts and micro finishes. And finally, use rewards. But here's the trick. They have to be unpredictable and creative. If you reward yourself the exact same way every time, it just becomes background noise. Mix it up to literally trick your brain into getting excited and motivated all over again.
Part 6. The proactive mindset. The bottom line. Bringing all of these behavioral science concepts together, let's do a rapid-fire recap of these 4 emotional tools. Because as we've learned today, our ability to find success relies massively on how well we manage our own thoughts and feelings. You've got to plan ahead so you don't get crushed by the big picture. You have to chase the genuine passion so you don't die of boredom during the thousands of hours of practice. You absolutely must challenge your own cognitive biases to fight off that internal discouragement and self-sabotage. And finally, you have to recognize your progress to survive that brutal, long slog in the middle. At the end of the day, being proactive is really just about actively managing your own negative emotions and beliefs before they manage you.
Which leaves us with one final thought to close out this explainer. What goal are you going to proactively chase today? You've got the map, you know exactly how to slay those internal dragons, and you know how to push through the boring middle. It is time to stop waiting around for success to tap you on the shoulder, and go out there and get it yourself. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you next time.